In this video, what we're going to do is look at running offline diagnostics on the 3000 using what's called the DUS tape, or the Diagnostic Utility Subsystem tape. And with every 3000 there was a tape called the DUS tape, which this is an example of the DUS tape here. And what this tape had on it, and any system manager or CE or SE could create one of these tapes from MPE. All the files were loaded on the MPE system. So one of the first things that SE would do, or a system manager after installing a new system, would be to cut a new DUS tape for the system. And what this tape has on it, it has a standalone, a minimal standalone program that has a bunch of hardware diagnostics and utilities on it. So this tape can be used to examine the I/O configuration that's on the system, initialize disks, look at different parameters and configurations and health of different peripherals that are on the system and so forth. What we're going to do today is we're actually going to use this to look at the peripherals that are configured on the system. And what I've done is I've actually powered on all the peripherals that are currently connected, cabled up to this system. The tape drive, all the disk drives, the line printer, and so forth. And then we're going to look at doing some disk diagnostics, like initializing a disk and checking the health of a disk drive, specifically the HP3000, the Eagle disk drive. So the way that this tape would be used is the system would be powered up, and I've gone ahead and powered up the CPU down here. And again, you can't really see it well, but here's the activity light, the I/O light. Whenever I/O activity is going on, will light up. I've gone ahead and powered everything up. So a system manager CE would power up the system, including the tape drive, and load the DUS tape. And we'll just do that here real quick. Okay, we don't care about compression. And we're going to load this, and we want to go ahead and put it online. So again, with there's another video that shows how this tape drive works, 7980 tape drive, but the Airstream is looking for the end of the tape. As soon as the take-up reel starts spinning, it means it's found it. Okay, so this reel's spinning, and the airflow is threading the tape through the channel by the read-write heads here, and it's going to thread it on the take-up reel, and then locate the beginning of tape, put it online. And what I've done over on the console over here is we see that the system has come up. So we see up here is the firmware prompts have displayed on the console. It's finished the power on self-test, cache test is passed, memory test is passed. We have 4 megabytes of memory in the system, and here's the channel configuration. So what we want to do is, in another video about booting the MPE operating system, we saw how at this command prompt here, the firmware prompt at the hardware level, we could use the start command to boot off of disk. What we want to do is actually boot this standalone SADutil program, which is just a self-contained program module which has all the drivers and all the drivers built in, so it doesn't need an operating system. It's actually just a little operating system on its own, or a monitor more appropriately. So what we want to do is actually boot from tape. So to do that, we have the load command, but what I'm going to do first is we need to know the address of the tape drive. And if you've seen my other videos, we know we can go into the test submenu, and there's a command here called IO map, and that IO map command at the firmware level will run a firmware routine that will go out and query what devices are configured on, or what devices are connected and powered on the system. If a device is not powered on, I/O map is not going to see it. So we see devices 0 and 1, or HPIB peripheral devices. Those are our 2 disk drives that we have just below the CPU. So they're the disk drives that are down below the CPU in this cabinet here. Device 2 is our 7974 mag tape drive. That's the big tape drive that's right over here. 9144 cartridge tape unit. Can't really see it in this video, but it's this cartridge tape unit that's just right down here. And the other device is HPIB peripheral. That's the disk array that only has 1 spindle in it, so it's essentially just a disk drive. 7937 is the Eagle, and 7980, which is the device that the SAD-Util tape is on right now, is device number 6. And then we have the line printer as the last device. So this actually just kind of remember what the information looks like that we see here on the firmware version of the I/O map, because we're going to run the equivalent SAD-Util version, and we're going to actually see more detailed information when we run that. So what this has told us is we want to boot off the mag tape here, and that's going to be device 6, and it's going to be on channel 4. Just up, oops, sorry. This guy here, this channel 4. So let me just put the cursor back down here. We're going to go back to the root menu. I'm going to say load off of channel 4, device 6. And then that will start reading the SAD-Util standalone program off of tape, and then it'll boot itself up and we'll get a prompt from SAD-Util. Okay. Looks like it's loading some more. Okay. Thank you, Bill Gates. We don't need to see that. Okay, so does system Rev 3.09 enter our program name, and we do not have a let's do help so we can see what the commands are for DUS. Now, what the DUS tape is, it's actually just kind of a very crude monitor and a bunch of programs or utilities packed together, and there's this kind of like master program and a bunch of subroutines, and each of the subroutines correspond to different utilities. And there's a directory at the beginning of the tape, so whenever you say, tell me what the commands are, what it's really going to do is go out and kind of read that directory and go, oh, here's all the files / commands / programs or subroutines, subprograms that I have. So that's whenever we do that help, we're going to see the tape rewind there. So we don't want to do any more. So the important thing here is these are the diagnostics that the system thinks it has on the tape, along with the utilities. You can actually build your own set of stream files to do kind of string together invocation of some of these utilities, and then standalone file manager, which I actually believe is what this program is that we're talking to, is here. So now, just because there's an entry like up here, like sleuth SM, this guy here, there's an entry. If we try and run sleuth SM, there's nothing there. I don't know why it's not on the tape, but for whatever reason, when I cut this tape, it didn't get loaded. So what we're going to do, we're going to run, just to give us an idea of how we would use some of these things to diagnose and explore a system. We're going to run a couple of things here. And the first thing we're going to do is start with I/O map, which is kind of our general purpose guide that goes and figures out everything that needs to happen on the system. Okay, so I've set I/O map up here, and it's telling me enter go to continue, go /1 to continue with the line printer. It would echo things in line printer. We're not going to do that. We're just going to say go. So what that's going to do is it is going to go out to the tape. Oh no, I guess it already loaded it. what it did was it ran the IO map command, and if we notice on this particular IO map command, there's more detailed information. So for like device 0 and 1 earlier, let's just go up here, see if I can remember. This is at the firmware level. When we did an IO map for devices 0 and 1, it just said, oh, there's some generic HPIB device out there. Now when we look at the IO map command in SADUtil for device 0 and 1, it's saying, oh, I found a 7959 or /7963 disk drive. So SADUtil actually can give us more detailed information about what's on the system, what's configured, and so forth. Excuse me. And so that's important. And it can tell us various things about if it can do loopback or self-test, that kind of thing. For like code equals 3, loopback self-test only available in product diagnostic. What that means is, for example, a disk, there would only be a specific utility that you'd have to load to do the diagnostic for that particular disk drive and so forth. Although, that being said, we're going to run SADUtil utility to see if we can initialize the Eagle disk drive. So that's how IO map would get used. And so let's go back and see what other commands or utilities were on the SADUtil tape, because there's another for initializing disks. And what we're going to do is CS80XR. So this guy right here is a exercise initialization utility for command set 80 disks. So CS80 stands for command set 80. That's the instruction set, the protocol that was used for like the Eagle disk drive that we have in our system, or the 2200 disk array, that kind of thing. So the kind of what I would say is the post 1980-81 disks that were out there. So what we want to do is we want to run CS80XR, and when I hit enter, it's going to load the that utility off the system. Okay, so it's loaded the CS80 utility, and what it's going to ask us to do now is to configure the disks that we want to work with. We're only going to do one, so let's just call it logical device number 1, DRT number. So that's going to want to know what's the device reference table number for the disk that we want to work with. And for the 7937, if we remember our formula, it's the channel number times 8 plus the device number. So for the 7937, let me just scroll up here. So the channel number, here's the 7937 here. The channel number is 4. So 4 times 8 is 32. And the device number is 5. So 5 plus 32 is 37. So the DRT number is going to be 37. So let's scroll back down. Put the cursor back here. So DRT number is 37. And we can't see it, but the once we start this utility, I'll actually move the camera so we can see what's going on with that. So we've configured logical device number 1. This logical device, yes, let's just check and see. Let me move the cursor out of the way here. So we have one device at DRT37. So let's see what commands CS80 exercise has for us here. So this has a bunch of different commands, and there's some commands that are specific for different disk drives. Like this guy here is the AHA automatic head alignment is only for the 7933 and 35 disk drives. 7935 and 33 were the big washing machine drives. The 35 had a removable pack. The 33 was the exact same drive, except the switch was removed to open the door, so it was in theory a fixed head, or not fixed head, sorry. It was a non-removable pack. Cache on, off. Let's look at clear logs. So let's do this. Let's do convert, describe, diag. Okay, so let's do. What we're going to do is we're going to run diag on LDEV1. Let me just reposition the cursor down here. Get through all that. So we're going to say diag space 1. Okay, we only want to do this once. So now what it's doing, you can kind of see down below. Right down here is the activity light for the 7937. Okay, so that stopped blinking. Let me just leave that right there. Ha! And it's showing us a red light on the front, which means it has some kind of hardware problem on that guy. Okay, so that terminated in a fault state, which is not surprising. I think that's a head alignment issue with this particular drive. Let's see if we can do a, here's a good one, a run-only error rate test, ROERT. So ROERT1. Okay, so it's running that error rate test. Enter the test type. PT selected. No, let's just do random area. Loop count. We're just going to do 1. Log or print errors. We want that to go to log. Okay, so we can see from the activity light here on that drive. Okay, so that finished, and what we could probably do, I don't have the, let's just do one more. Let's just do init media and see, oh, let's do this. Let's do tables for LDEV1. Okay, so this is going to show us the, it looks like the bad block, bad track table that are found on the disk. Do you want to see spare sectors? Yeah, let's go ahead and just look at that. And you know, all disks are going to have some bad areas on the disk. So what happens when a track or a sector is spared is that it detects some bad location on the disk, and what the disk does is essentially redirect any I/O to that particular bad area to a known good area. So it's kind of like saying, oh, if you're going to this address, that address is bad, so go to this new address, which we know is good and has good data written on it. So it's kind of like an area, a way to detour around bad areas on the disk. And unfortunately, there's not a Control-C or anything. This is, again, a standalone diagnostic, so its user interface is extremely limited in terms of what it could do. But you know, the way it was used, the CEs or SEs would just use this to find out, what do I have a bad peripheral, and if I do, how bad is it, and where are the problems going on in the peripheral, and so forth. We'll let this run just for another minute or so, and then we're going to stop it. So while this is running, like I said earlier, there's also different diagnostics that peripheral divisions that did like tape drives or line printers or whatever could also, or would also, make available with the those different peripherals that exercise the functions that were specific to that particular piece of hardware. Okay, so this red light, I already knew that this drive had problems, so this red light here is indicating that there's some kind of drive failure there. Okay, and so once we're done, we can, I believe, do an exit. There we go, and we're back at the SADUtil root menu. I just did a help, and that'll rewind the tape and so forth. And then if we were done, what the CE would do is, you know, unfortunately on this system, the way you kind of do a restart on the system is you just cycle the power on the 3000 front panel. So turn it off, wait a second, turn it back on. It's going to start back up through its self-test phase. While it's doing that, we can hit reset, unload, take the SADUtil tape out of the drive, and then the system will just go and boot up after this. Now, we don't have that disk that was we were running the diagnostics on. It's actually not configured into the system. We have MPE loaded on a known good disk drive. I just keep this one around just to run tests on, or if essentially for spare parts. That's what that's being kept around for. So this is what we would use to run our diagnostics on the 3000. Okay, so that's all I have on the dust tape. Take a look at some of my other videos on this HP3000 system, and thanks a lot.